Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. 55 years ago, an American pollster named Warren Mitofsky began organizing the polling of voters who had just cast their ballots. These came to be known as exit polls. The first exit poll was used in Kentucky in 1967, and the first nationwide exit poll was held in 1972. That's over half a century ago. And now in India, exit polls are the norm. But clearly, they aren't an exact science. And joining me to discuss this today are my colleagues Brijesh Pandey and Gulam Jeelani. We're also joined by author and political analyst Neerja Chowdhury. Neerja, big fan of your book, How Prime Ministers Decide. Tell us how exit polls have been deciding and keeping us on tenterhooks since yesterday.
I know. Few elections have had, contests that have been so close.
Right.
Actually, none of us can say about any of the states what is going to really happen. Normally, after exit polls, you are able to say, roughly which way the wind is blowing. But this is too close a contest, it seems. And that is very interesting politically.
Brijesh, what gives? I mean, why are the elections such a mixed bag? Is it something to do with the methodology of the exit polls, or is it that truly these elections are too close to call?
Well, I think, Sandeep, these are fairly indicative numbers of which way the wind is blowing.
Right.
And if you look in the past record of pollsters who have predicted fairly accurately, like,
right.
My Axis or a couple of others, they have been, their success rate is 80% and all. So
right.
usually you tend to go with their predictions, and because the difference in seat is like, from 120 to 140, and a lot can happen between 120 and 140.
Yeah, exactly. Governments can be...
Exactly. I mean, like, when you're fighting for 2 seats or 3 seats, these 20 seats gap is too much of a gap.
Right.
But the figures which have come out, Sandeep, I'm not looking at it as a scientific this thing or for sure,
right.
but the figures are incredible.
Right.
The reason why figures are incredible is that in all the states, it was exactly opposite what was supposed to happen.
Yes.
Like for the state of Rajasthan,
Yeah.
for the last 3 decades, it has a revolving door policy with, BJP and then Congress forming the government. And
Yeah.
whenever BJP would form the government, the Congress would go to almost its nadir, winning
Absolutely.
30, 40
Yeah.
seats and
Yeah.
all. But this time, even if you go to the pollster which are giving them worse seats, that worst seat is above 75.
Right.
So it is very, very interesting to see how Rajasthan has voted. Now, Madhya Pradesh was another where, after a very long time, I would say, this kind of experiment took place where you send your sitting cabinet ministers and
Right.
member of parliaments and put them there in Madhya Pradesh to work victory for you.
Right.
Now, if you go by 2 pollsters which have predicted outrageous figure, if I may say so.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it will turn the politics of Madhya Pradesh on its head.
Right.
And third being Telangana.
Of course.
Where, 6 months back, if anybody would have told you that, Congress is in reckoning,
Yeah.
they would have just laughed at him.
Right.
And right now, majority of the pollsters are putting Congress ahead of the BRF. And that is why I would say, Sandeep, there's so much chatter around these, exit polls.
Right. Gulam, what is it about exit polls that, in the last couple of years, they've not been very consistent, right? There have been some very, very big misses in the last few decades.
Yes.
What are the biggest misses according to you?
See, if you look at the exit polls, you cannot dismiss them outrightly,
Yeah.
but you cannot take them without a pinch of salt.
Right.
If you see 2004, if you go back to 2004 elections, India shining and everybody was predicting that NDA is coming back, but we saw what happened.
Yes.
Then 2014 elections, no pollster except Axis by India gave 300 plus to NDA.
Right.
And we saw what a surprise it was, supreme majority. So my thing is that these exit pollsters had not seen supreme majorities until 2014.
Right.
They were mixed. There were these coalition governments.
Yeah.
So after 2014, they have improved a lot.
Right.
As you said, the first pollster was in Kennedy. But if you talk about India, the first opinion poll was done in 1967 by
Right.
Indian Institute of Opinion Polls, Indian Institute of Public Opinion.
Yeah.
So, but the sample size was just 20,000.
Right.
Over the years, the sample size has increased. If you look at 2019, one of the exit polls had a sample size of around 7 lakh,
Right.
which comes to one in every 4,000 voters.
Right.
Over the years they have improved. I won't say
Yeah.
they are off the mark, but some have nailed it.
Right.
As I said, there were some there was Axis My India in 2014 which said BJP will give.
Right.
2015 was a classic example, Bihar elections. Nobody said that Mahagathbandhan will come to power.
Right.
Even 2015 Delhi election was
Delhi
an
election was, I would have just, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but like Delhi election was, the results were so frightening, the figures
Yeah.
were so staggering,
Yeah.
that they
Landslide.
refused to run it.
Yes.
And when the figures came out, it was
67 out of
67
67 out of
And when the
76,
figures
yeah.
came out, it was almost
Right,
to the T.
right.
So they have been accurate also.
And Neerja, meanwhile, there's this, the 2004, I mean, who can forget the India Shining election, where everyone, I think bar none, actually predicted that the NDA was coming back to power, and exactly the opposite happened.
That's right. I remember that even journalists were so affected. If you went into the, hit the road and went to various areas, and you got, a different picture.
Right.
But the hype was so great.
Yes.
That about India shining. That you're absolutely right. Pollsters got it wrong. Journalists got it wrong. And I do know pollsters who, when they decided to finally come to figures.
Right.
They were influenced by this India shiny. Were we getting it right to go the other way?
Right.
So they went more conservative.
Yes.
Of course, in India there's another problem. Unlike the West, people will tell you I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican in
Yeah.
the United States of America. Before elections, everybody knows how you're going to vote.
Right.
In India, even after exit polls, if
Yeah.
you talk to people and ask them, how did you vote? They will ask you, how do you want me to? How did you want me to vote? What do you want? So, many of them will not come out with the real picture, with the truth of how they have voted.
Right.
So, in India, the story goes very different.
Yeah.
And in order to know how people are thinking, you've got to spend a long time with them, ask the right questions. So,
Yes.
they feel it's all right, safe for me to say the way I want to vote or the way I voted.
Right. So, Brijesh,
So
you were
exit
taking...
polls can, this thing, that we've seen in these exit polls yesterday, 1% difference between the two mainline parties, 1.5% difference, and the margin of error is supposed to be 3%.
Right.
So all of them could have got it wrong.
That's a very valid
3%, yeah, 3% is like governments, built and they rise and fall on
So there are, I think
much
there are
smaller
some
percentages.
pollsters which, they take a very, I would say, a leap of faith. They say, they call the elections before, they say, elections results
Yeah,
before the
yeah,
results. They say that, like in Rajasthan, in MP, for example, Axis My India is giving clean sweep to BJP,
Right.
which other pollsters are not doing. It is also to do with the kind of surveys that they did.
Yeah.
There may be something wrong with the type of questions that they've, gave to the surveyors, or there may be some, it's ultimately science, it's ultimately data analysis. There may
Right.
be some, errors in data generation and data analysis also.
Right.
But again, you cannot dismiss them. They have been, some of them have nailed it, and some of them have been very,
Right.
they have not been correct.
So, Brijesh, taking up from where what Neerja said, the fact that a lot of exit polls fail to detect that wave election, like what happened. Well, 2004 wasn't one, but certainly 2014 was one. I think everyone got those numbers wrong. I think a lot of them predicted it was going to be just above the.
I think what has happened, Sandeep, is if you look at the political topography from 2004 onwards, I think when it came closer to 2012 and onwards, there was all these analysts who has come into picture, the backroom boys as you call them, coining those catchy phrases, catchy slogans which help people talk about it, creating a lot of chatter on the social media.
Right.
So a lot changed after 2004 and 2009 onwards.
Right.
And from 2014 onwards, it's a completely different gig altogether, where you have lot many people who have nothing to do with pure per se politics, are the one who are deciding and fashioning the course of the way a political
Number
party is supposed to.
crunchers and
Number crunchers, data analysts, and also like people like as we heard in Bharat Jodo Yatra, Sunil Konoglu, then you have a Dream Box. So 50 people have come up with their own shop trying to do everything for you.
Right.
The point is that I would say that with most of the credible pollsters, what they do is that they give, 80% of the time they are fairly accurate in telling you which way the wind is blowing.
Right.
So it's fairly indicative of how the situation would turn up.
Right.
But if you say that, like, if we feel that every time they're going to be wrong, I think, I mean, as she was saying, that it's very hard to gauge an Indian voter's mind. People would vote for somebody, and when you ask him a question, so who have you voted for? He'll give you a completely different spin altogether.
But Neerja, the fact is that exit polls are here to stay. I don't think anyone's dismissing them off, right? And do you see them actually a lot more investments being made in exit polls now with the kind of technology, the tools that are available now? Maybe who knows, AI tools as well probably be deployed in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and with national elections now coming with very high stakes for the political parties. Yes, there's bound to be, even the number of exit polls held yesterday.
Yes.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happened last time, but my guess is that the number is larger. Many more people are going in for it because there is so much curiosity. People now want to know immediately which way the election is going.
Right.
And if you notice, the politicians are very smart.
Right.
Even from the exit polls yesterday, they would have got a good sense that how things are going.
Right.
And their body language, that tells you a lot. I think even at the time, I remember Indira Gandhi in 1977 and saying this, that after she'd filed her nomination papers, to declare the election, filed her nomination papers, when she came out of the room, she said, I got a sense that I might lose that election. Because people, the way they respond, those who gathered outside, the way they responded to her, their body language, was enough indication. And those of us who've covered elections, year after year for decades, also sometimes, you realize it's a dead audience or a live audience.
That's right.
Dead audience, people who've been brought there or have just come and sit down on these chairs because it's expected of them, or they've been paid money for it, or those who are really enthused, and you sense this undercurrent of change that they may want.
That's a politician's instinct.
That doesn't mean you will be able to predict the numbers, but you may be able to say which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah, which way the wind is blowing. Neerja, and it's an interesting point you mentioned, that the exit polls are part of what I call the T20fication of electoral results, that everyone wants to know now, here, now. Technology has kind of added to our impatience, and in fact we've come up with these 4 scenarios, the 4 likely scenarios for Sunday, and the possible impact that these scenarios could have on national elections. Of course, we'll have to wait until Sunday to see which of these 4 it will be, but let's take a look. Neerja, I want to thank you for your insights. We'll keep coming back to you for, we're heading into the thick of election seasons, but thank you very much for joining us. My colleagues Brijesh, Gulam, thank you. Speaking of elections, Argentina just saw the world's first elections where both sides used AI-generated deepfakes. Now, India's elections are less than 5 months away, and we have this story warning of how deepfakes could be the new tool for political slugfests. Let's watch.
5, 4, 3, 2. It is none other than, ladies and gentlemen, Shri Narendra Modi.
जीजा की बारात नहीं, तेरी कोई औकात नहीं इस इलेक्शन में। बन जा मेरा चेला, तुझे बहुत कुछ सिखाना है। मेरी योजना सुन के तेरी मम्मा बोले, ओ ये तो मेरी वाली योजना है। हौसले से जीने दे, अब खौफ नहीं है सीने में, हर रास्ते को चीरेंगे
वोट बैंक आया, वोट बैंक का धर्म अपनाया।
बधाई हो आप सभी को, क्योंकि अभी अभी नागरिकता संशोधन बिल।
Jai Shri Ram, greetings to all. Friends, I'm here just to ask about the work accounted for.
Misuse of artificial intelligence is a global issue.
Where do you draw that line between something being fake and something being real?
They have a very sort of like rapid pace of penetrating with any information.
Israel's war on Hamas has been on for nearly 2 months now. The war began with the horrific attacks by Hamas on Israeli civilians and soldiers on the 7th of October. Now, we've all known of Israel's intelligence failure, the utter failure to locate the planners, the mobilization for these attacks, and indeed the attacks itself when they broke out of Gaza on the 7th of October. But the New York Times today has a damning story out which says that Israel in fact had the entire attack plan a year ago. The plan was Operation Jericho Wall, and the contours of this revelation are stunning. It's the equivalent of the US being given a plan of the Pearl Harbor attack by Japan in 1942, or of India being told that the Pakistan army was going to occupy the Kargil Heights. And joining me to talk about this sensational disclosure of the New York Times is Brigadier Kuldeep Singh, a former member of the National Security Council Secretariat and a veteran intelligence operative, and of course my colleague Justin Thomas, who's been reporting on the Israel-Hamas war. Brigadier Singh, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Privilege to be on your show.
Brigadier Singh, first off, what do you make of this revelation? I mean, it's like the entire plan, like Israel had the entire Hamas attack plan, the battle plan, and yet they did nothing about it over a year ago.
I think the story in the New York Times could perhaps be seen from two contrasting perspectives. You know, the first perspective is that the story is absolutely true and they had the plans, and like you said, it is almost as if the US would have got the entire Pearl Harbor plan or even the 9/11 plan when in advance. Now, if this perspective, meaning that the story is true, it's correct, then it's a terrible, terrible repeat of the strategic failure of 1973. Right. And therefore, I shouldn't be saying it, but a sterling, but a very debilitating example of institutional arrogance and hubris overriding intelligence inputs, leading to a massive failure of the assessment or the correct assessment of the available intelligence information. Now, it would also be a damning indictment of the Israeli intelligence communities and its adjuncts' inability to learn any lesson from the past, right, especially because in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel won the war solely because of the immense support provided by the USA.
Right.
Now, the second perspective, I had said two perspectives. So with your permission, I'll outline the second perspective also. The second contrasting perspective is that the report is now being leaked to the NYT is perhaps a fabrication.
Right.
And is aimed at redeeming the very badly damaged reputation of the Israeli intelligence community or IC, the intelligence community, the IC as we call it. But we do know that the head of the research division of Israel's intelligence division had twice told Netanyahu that the political social crisis in Israel was encouraging Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. to attack the nation. But it should be noted that this was a generic warning and not
Yeah.
a specific warning about the attack by Israel. There was yet another warning, and it is confirmed now that Israel's National Security Advisor, Zaki Hanegbi, had called the head of the Shin Bet, that is Israel Domestic Service Security Service, Ronen Bar, at about 4 a.m. on 7th October, which is just about 2 to 3 hours before the attack began, and to discuss with him new intelligence information.
Right.
But overall, at the national security level, it was decided there was no need for a military mobilization. So whichever is the case is, it doesn't speak well about the overall capability and the efficiency of Israel's much wanted, much flaunted, much appreciated intelligence community, and it's all in junk.
No, that's a very good perspective, Brigadier Singh, and of course you refuse to go by. I mean, I like your analysis. You've taken a completely different perspective on these revelations. I never thought of it that way. But Justin, you've been covering the war in Russia, and as Brigadier Singh was saying, much wanted, much flaunted. Here you have a case of a president who was actually a spy and a spy master after that, a KGB man. How did he completely analyze the Ukrainian will to fight in 2022 when he launched the invasion?
Yes, of course there was a lot of talks about how President Putin. There were obviously the Western countries knew that there were some plans going on, but Putin himself was very sure because his tank brigade, which went on almost till the capital city, it showed that he was so confident and cocky about the fact that Ukraine is just gonna, fall like a pack of cards.
Right.
But he never, his intel agencies completely underestimated the level of challenge that the Ukrainians were going to put up.
Yes.
And that in itself shows that all these wanted so-called surprise attacks are not really surprises.
Right.
It's actually a basis of an intel failure that it never happened.
Right.
They didn't capture the mood of the current situation.
Yeah.
But they believed that their power, their supremacy was so overpowering,
Right.
they'll be able to rough ride any situation.
Yes.
And that's where Putin also met a similar situation where he found himself wanted, had to backtrack, and then be entrenched in a war which continues till now.
Absolutely. And in fact, we've just listed the 5 biggest intel failures over the last 50 years. You have the 1973 Yom Kippur War that Brigadier Singh mentioned, and then you have the 1999 Kargil War, which started when the Pakistan's Northern Light Infantry stealthily infiltrated and captured the heights in and around Kargil. And then you have the 9/11 attacks, where the United States was completely taken by surprise when these hijackers flew their planes into buildings. And then you have the 26/11 attacks of November 2008, where Pakistani terrorists attacked Mumbai. And finally, like you mentioned, Justin, Russia's assessment that Ukraine would collapse like a house of cards. But Brigadier Singh, how egregious is Israel's intelligence failure in the light of all of these failures? I mean, would you actually call it more like a policy failure rather than just an int failure?
You see, in my informed opinion, my background.
Yes.
I think the capabilities of the Israeli armed forces and its intelligence community are perhaps overrated.
Right.
And we go by the tales they tell. Much of opinions about the Israeli intelligence community actually stem from the stories and accounts of the inimical people or the people that they desire and kill. Now, it needs to be noted that the role of neutralizing people is just one very, very small part of intelligence work, and that most intelligence agencies have a very distinct special activities division which handles that part. Now, intelligence work is not what you see in James Bond movies, a man moving, with lovely girls around the countryside, very fit, shooting his way through, but it's often grinding and boring. And the work of a good IC or an intelligence community, not this the agency, but the community, comprises collection of intelligence, requisite intelligence, targeted intelligence through a set of intelligence requirements, taking that raw intelligence inputs collating them, separating them, interpreting them, juxtaposing them with a competing negative hypothesis, and then formulating a very clear assessment for decision makers to act upon. This assessment cannot be, that if this, then that, IFTT, it cannot be that. It has to be a clear-cut, non-ambiguous assessment. Now, for that, all intelligence agencies additionally have very finite resources as compared to their mandates. And therefore, their focus has to be on strategic work, as well as on aspects about which clear information is not available in the open domain. Now, my view is that in the case of Israel, their focus is largely on surveillance and tactical and operational intelligence.
Right.
And that's what they're specialized in. And in this particular case, there is clearly what we see, what happens when there is too much of surveillance. The amount of information that you get grounds you in that information overload, and you fail to see that critical bit of intelligence, which is going to be, that head of the giraffe which completes the puzzle.
Right. That's a very interesting analogy. The head of the giraffe that completes the puzzle. And in this case, the head of the giraffe happened to be the fact that the Israelis underestimated Hamas and its ability to pull off that attack.
Yes, because the report says very clearly, it states out that it's an audacious plan.
Yeah.
But Hamas doesn't have legs
we
to
don't
carry
believe
this out.
That's right, the legs of the giraffe. The Hamas
Exactly.
doesn't have the legs to carry it off. But thank you very much, Brigadier Singh. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and learn from your insights. And finally, the movie that everyone in Bollywood is talking about, Animal. Joining me on the show from Mumbai is Karan Taurani, Senior Vice President, Elara Capital. Karan, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Karan, tell us about this movie. How has it taken Bollywood by storm? We were talking just a little while earlier of how Bollywood has discovered its animal spirits, but this new film is quite something.
Yes, definitely. I think if you go by the advances, it looks to be very compelling. And I think this film is on course to achieve a very strong opening of about 40 to 50 crores net box office domestic on day one.
Right.
And the lifetime box office collections of this film could land anywhere between 350 to 400 crores domestic net box office. So it's looking quite compelling for now, and it can also breach this guidance in terms of box office estimates if the film word of mouth and reviews turns out to be better than expectation.
Right. And how many careers has this film actually revived, Karan? Going by what you said, it's out to be a super hit. And we have an actor like Bobby Deol there who doesn't have a single line of dialogue in any of the promos, but he's clearly stolen the show. And you have, of course, Ranbir.
Yes, absolutely. I think, Ranbir Kapoor does have a very strong fan following. If you look at some of his films, large franchise films like Brahmastra, they've also done well last year.
Right.
Tu Jhooti Makkar, obviously not fair as per expectations, but it was like kind of on par. So I think he does have a crowd pulling, he does have a large fan following base, and that is what's leading to this strong box office. You also can't forget, Rashmika Mandanna, who's the actress from South, and this film also potentially can do well in South because even the director has got a very strong track record of Kabir Singh. So I think all in all, it looks to be like a very big film in terms of release, and the collections also are expected to be very strong.
Very strong. Justin, are you looking forward to watching this film? It's 3.5 hours.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But the kind of promo that came out, when I watched it first, I couldn't believe that it's actually a Bollywood movie that's running, that is I'm going to see soon. But then I watched it again, and the kind of action sequences that they have created,
the glamour, the visual glamour of the film.
I mean, visual glamour that you just caught up in that very moment, and just it's something that you wanted to look forward
in fact, that's a great Karan, is this a Bollywood film or is it actually a Telugu film with some Hindi actors in it? And it's of course in the Hindi language.
Yeah, I think, after what we've seen in the post-COVID era, we've seen films like Pushpa, KGF, RRR, Kantara.
Right.
These have been sleeper hits, right? So
yes.
I think nowadays it's not about Hindi, regional, or Tamil or Telugu.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
most of these films are pan-India films. And
Right.
I believe that, because the actress is South and because the director is also from South,
Yeah.
this film could also deliver a very strong box office number down South. And
Yes.
generally, if you look at the films, Hindi films have been a laggard as far as performance in dubbed regional version is concerned.
Yeah.
This could kind of look at changing that trend as well.
Right. So, in fact, Justin, we were talking about this a little while earlier about the fact that this could actually be the last couple of months, as you said, Karan, is that you're looking at the birth of a new wave of boundaryless Indian cinema. Indiawood, pan-Indian cinema, It's, and possibly this is, the beginning of that wave that we are catching. But thank you very much for your insights, Karan. And Justin, we'll discuss that film after we watch it over the weekend. And we'll leave you with the story on crime in politics, for which my colleague Gulam Jeelani went through UP and Bihar to track this, some of the key talking heads in this story on crime and politics. It's a problem in Indian politics, and it's in the news now because of a very interesting court case. Do watch.
वो पूछते हैं कि हम कौन है गालिब, तुम बतलाओ कि हम बतलाएं क्या।
या तो इनकी मोहब्बत है या तो इनका ये दबदबा जो है हर बिरादरी में, चाहे हिंदू हो चाहे मुसलमान हो।
If I follow the law, then I will not be alive tomorrow. So I told him, you do what you think is best, I will not insist.
वो कि साहब हम इनके यहाँ जाएंगे तो हम सेफ हैं, या हम इनके साथ जुड़े रहेंगे तो हम सेफ हैं। इस सोच ने इस बाहुबली विचारधारा को जो है जन्म दिया है।
क्रिमिनलाइजेशन का नाम गरीबों का मसीहा नहीं दे सकते, ये कहीं से भी सही नहीं है।